This is Brian. Brian goes on a run. Let's look at what happens as he goes on the run. Brian running requires his muscles to work hard, particularly his leg muscles. In order for Brian's leg muscles to work, ATP is used. ATP is the fuel for muscle contraction. But where does this ATP come from?
In order to explain this fully, we have to look at lung and gas exchange. Gas exchange takes three major steps. First, ventilation, which is process of moving air in and out of the lungs. Oxygen comes in and carbon dioxide goes out.
Side note, in order to explain how oxygen moves in and out, we must discuss transport. Specifically, how substances transport around the body. Essentially, things move along a concentration gradient without the use of energy. This is called passive transport. For example, oxygen will move from a place of higher concentration to a place of lower concentration.
Now that we know about passive transport, let's explain how this affects ventilation. When breathing in, our external intercostal muscles contract, which are muscles around our lungs. This contraction expands the thoracic cavity or the space in our lungs, which lowers the pressure inside the lungs and therefore the concentration of oxygen. And because oxygen moves along a concentration gradient, oxygen runs into our lungs.
Let's move on to step 2, gas exchange, the process of moving oxygen from lungs to blood and carbon dioxide from blood to lungs. Gas exchange occurs here, the alveoli, which are tiny air sacs where air exchanges, and the capillaries, which are small blood vessels surrounding the alveoli.
Side note: to explain how oxygen and CO2 exchange through these, understand that biological membranes are semi-permeable. Basically, they have small pores or holes that allow substances to transfer through.
Now that we know that, understanding that oxygen and CO2 can move through alveoli and capillary blood vessels along the concentration gradient through the membranes.
Finally, cell respiration. Cell respiration is a process of mitochondria turning glucose into ATP, using oxygen, producing CO2 and water as waste products.
Now that Brian has ATP, which will be used as fuel to contract his leg muscles so he can continue running.
But hold on, how does the blood carrying oxygen move around the body?
That's easy, the heart. The heart functions as a pump for blood. The role of blood serves as a transport medium for oxygen and for other things. The heart seems complicated, but can be broken down simply. Let's look at the different types of blood vessels. Veins bring blood to the heart. They are thin-walled and low pressures. Arteries bring blood away from the heart to parts of the body. They are thick-walled and high pressure. Finally, capillaries, which we already discussed. They are the smallest and thinnest vessels which connect arteries to the veins. They are thin in order to serve as a transport medium, such as transporting gas between alveoli and themselves. Now let's explain the heart.
Blood without oxygen enters the right atrium through the superior and inferior vena cava. The right atrium pumps blood to the right ventricle through a valve that prevents the blood flowing backwards. The right ventricle pumps that blood to the pulmonary artery through another valve which takes the blood to the lungs where it can be filled with oxygen from the alveoli. Then, the blood enters the left atria through the pulmonary veins. The left atria pumps the blood through another valve into the left ventricle, then pumps it through the last valve to the aorta, which is the arteries to the rest of the body. It's that simple.
Last question. How does the blood carry oxygen?
I'll give you a hint: proteins.
Oh yeah, hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a globular protein. Globular proteins are functional, meaning they carry out specific bodily functions. They are round and spherical, and generally soluble in water. Hemoglobin is found in the red blood cells. It is what allows red blood cells to carry oxygen. Hemoglobin's structure directly affects its ability to carry oxygen.
Hemoglobin is made up of four subunits, and each subunit has a heme group with an iron atom in the middle which connects to an oxygen molecule. One hemoglobin protein can carry four oxygen molecules. The structure directly corresponds to its functions to move oxygen around the body. So that's how oxygen gets in the blood and moves around the blood, which is actually the whole point of blood, to carry things around the body.
All these processes happen in the body and allow Brian to run.